When I was still around, Maya had grown tired of me. She presented me with divorce papers, ready to marry the man she truly loved. My life ended in a car accident, tragically on the very day she was getting married to him. After my death, I heard she lost her composure completely, consumed by grief, but then, somehow, I found myself back, living again. Now, Maya stood before me, promising things were different. "I didn't get together with him, Leo," she insisted. "I can show you my call records. You can have my social media passwords, the tracking data from my car, even security footage from my daily commutes." She pleaded, her voice weary. "Can we please just start over?" I refused. When I had loved her wholeheartedly, she found me tiresome. Now that she was offering what seemed like genuine feelings, I no longer wanted them. It felt too late. As she was leaving, Maya habitually leaned in for a goodbye kiss, a gesture familiar from our years together. I turned my head slightly, dodging it with a polite smile. Maya frowned, her expression instantly turning cold. "What more do you want from me? I've already apologized about Daniel." I looked down, managing a faint smile. "I'm not trying to make a scene," I said softly. "I just have a bit of a cold and didn't want to pass it on to you." Maya stared at me, her eyes searching mine. "Leo, if you're worried about betrayal, acting this way isn't a good strategy to keep me." I looked up at her then and laughed lightly. All right. You should probably get to work. Daniel might be waiting for you." Maya's expression darkened, and she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I watched her go, the smile still lingering on my face, though it didn't reach my eyes. I turned and walked towards Sophie's room. Sophie is my stepsister, though we weren't close. I smiled gently as I peeked in. "Hungry?" I asked softly. "Want to go downstairs and grab some breakfast?" Sophie turned her face away from the window she'd been staring out of. Her eyes were dark and calm, but they softened slightly as she looked at me. She gave a small nod. "Okay." As Sophie and I were heading downstairs, my phone rang. It was Maya again. "Leo," she started, her voice tight. "It was wrong of me to come home so late that day after having drinks with Daniel, but I swear, I just got drunk and nothing actually happened between us. This is the third time I'm apologizing. Can you please stop making such a fuss about it?" "Got it," I replied evenly, handing Sophie a glass of milk from the fridge. Inside, I felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, just a strange sense of detachment, almost amusement. I knew from my previous experience that nothing physical had happened between them yet, but I also knew what was inevitably coming, because I felt like I had lived this all once before. This felt like my second chance at life. In that previous life, or what felt like it, I had watched Maya and Daniel grow closer and closer. I had cried, argued, tried desperately to stop it, but I felt completely helpless. All my efforts only seemed to make Maya more tired of me, more annoyed, more distant. Eventually, she handed me the divorce agreement just before she was set to marry Daniel. On their wedding day, I drove frantically, intending to find Maya, to make one last attempt to change her mind. But I never made it. I was involved in a serious car accident. With my last bit of strength trapped in the wreckage, I managed to call her number. But she didn't answer. It was Daniel who picked up, his voice dripping with smug victory. "Please stop bothering my wife," he'd said coolly. "You should keep your distance from married people." In utter despair, I dropped the phone, losing the will to fight. The doctors couldn't save me. As I closed my eyes for what felt like the last time, the overwhelming sensations were pain and cold. I felt utterly alone in that sterile hospital room. My parents were living abroad at the time, and everyone else I knew was attending Maya's wedding celebration. The hospital staff notified people one by one. Only Sophie, The often overlooked illegitimate daughter of my father, the quiet stepsister, arrived in time to be with me at the very end. I vaguely remember her whispering in my ear, "Rest in peace, Leo. If I have to, I'll turn the world upside down for you." I saw her face, usually so calm, contorted with rage. I wanted to thank her, but I couldn't speak. Frustration was my final feeling as everything faded to black. My last conscious thought was a desperate wish. If I ever got another chance, another life, I would never love Maya again. I never expected that wish to be granted, that heaven, or whatever force governs these things, would actually listen. When I opened my eyes again, I was back here last night. It was the night of the first major fight Maya and I had because of Daniel. Maya and Daniel had gone out for dinner after work, gotten excessively drunk, and she had returned home very late, smelling faintly of his cologne and alcohol. In my previous life, I had yelled, cried, demanded explanations. Maya had just rubbed her forehead impatiently, saying she drank too much, and Daniel had simply taken her back to his place for a few hours to sober up before she came home. But this time, having relived that moment, knowing what I now knew, or felt I knew, I was certain nothing physical had happened between them at that specific point. I had a chance, perhaps, to intervene, to change the course of events. But instead, I simply closed my mouth, stopping the accusations before they started. I wiped away the instinctive tears that welled up and quietly took my blanket into the guest room to sleep, ignoring Maya's persistent knocking on the door. I remembered the vow I made in that hospital bed. In another life, I would never love Maya again. Let her and Daniel pursue whatever path they chose. I might even subtly help them along. This life felt precious, borrowed time earned at the highest cost. I didn't want to waste it consumed by obsessive love or jealousy. I wanted to live for myself this time, and perhaps repay the kindness of the one person who had been there for me. At the end, Sophie. Sophie and I were eating breakfast together in the dining room. She kept her head lowered, revealing the pale, slender curve of her neck. Her long, dark lashes hid her deep eyes, making her expression unreadable. Since she had been brought into the family fold years ago, she had always been quiet, keeping to the sidelines. Her origins as an illegitimate child meant most of the family looked down on her, often forgetting her existence entirely. My interactions with her had been minimal. I mostly just sent obligatory gifts on holidays and occasionally arranged for medicine to be sent if I heard she was sick. It felt like a small, inadequate gesture, but apparently it was enough for her to feel obligated to see me off in my final moments. The family had tossed a small, struggling subsidiary company her way, more as a way to keep her occupied than as a genuine opportunity, along with a minor inheritance. I remembered hearing, during this period in my past life, that she wasn't sleeping well, often waking up at night. Looking at her pale face now, the dark circles under her eyes, I thought for a moment. "You seem out of sorts lately," I commented gently. "Is your company facing difficulties? Do you need any help? I could potentially invest." My parents lived overseas, leaving me to manage all their domestic business interests. In my previous life, despite graduating from a prestigious university with a business degree, I had poured all my energy and attention into Maya. Maya didn't like men she perceived as overly ambitious or powerful, so I had stepped back from actively managing the family businesses, letting her take the reins of the company I technically owned. I contented myself with being her supportive partner, driving her to work, waiting patiently for her to come home. But in the end, she grew tired of that version of me. She saw me as confined to the domestic sphere, narrow-minded, focused only on our relationship. Daniel, on the other hand, was different. He operated on her level in the corporate world, possessed different experiences, and earned her professional respect which eventually bled into personal appreciation. In this life, I would rather face anything than be stuck at home again, passively waiting. I was determined to go back and reclaim control of my company. Sophie glanced up at me briefly, then looked down again. "I just had a nightmare," she murmured. "You should focus on your own affairs. We've been married for 3 years, Leo, and you haven't even reviewed the status of your own properties, have you?" She always insisted on calling me Leo, never by my name, a small, stubborn habit of hers. Even after I married Maya, she continued this formality, which had annoyed Maya on several occasions. But Sophie wouldn't change. I wiped my mouth with a napkin. "I intend to reclaim control of my properties and businesses," I stated firmly. "If you genuinely need investment for your company, just let me know. Consider it my responsibility to help." Sophie gave me a long, deep look, then lowered her head again, continuing to eat slowly. She seemed to be considering something carefully. After a while, she spoke, her voice quiet. "Leo, could you possibly rent me 2 floors in your main office building? I'll pay the standard market rate." She explained, "The current rent for my company's office space is too high. I've been wanting to move for a while now." If I rented space to her in my building, her company would be located directly below mine. It would certainly make it easier for me to offer support or return the favor I felt I owed her. So I agreed without hesitation, and immediately called my company secretary to make the necessary arrangements. Not 10 minutes later, Maya called. "You're renting office space in the building to Sophie?" she asked, her tone sharp. I was in my walk-in closet trying on some of my old work suits in front of the mirror. "Yeah," I replied casually. "Do you have any idea about Sophie's background? Why are you getting involved with her?" Maya sounded genuinely annoyed. "You've been out of the business loop for too long, Leo. You don't understand people like her. My father has countless illegitimate children, but she's the only one who managed to claw her way into the family structure. Her methods? They're beyond anything you can imagine." She then ordered me, "Just stay out of it. Don't get involved in business affairs you don't understand." I chuckled softly. "But it's my property," I added mildly. "It's listed as a prenuptial asset, remember?" Maya hesitated, then her voice softened slightly. "Are you still angry with me about the other night?" "No," I answered honestly. "Whatever happens between you and Daniel, I won't be angry. I just want to regain control of my own assets." "You think I'm embezzling your money?" Maya asked, her voice turning serious again. "You wouldn't do that," I shook my head. "I'm not overthinking things. I simply want my properties back under my direct management. It's as simple as that." In the past, she never touched my personal assets, even after the divorce. But the cheating, and her indirect role in the accident that led to my death, those were things I could never forgive. Maya's voice turned cold again. "Fine, do what you want, but I'm pulling my key personnel out of your companies." This was the first time I hadn't immediately deferred to her wishes, and this was her way of punishing me. I nodded, managing a smile. "Suit yourself." Maya was true to her word. Within hours, roughly a third of the senior management staff loyal to her resigned, leaving me with significant operational challenges. But I wasn't worried. Once you've faced death, very little else seems truly frightening. During the handover process, some of the remaining executives tried to advise me. "The company is stable under Maya's leadership. Just relax, let her handle things, and enjoy the profits." I politely gestured for them to leave my office. "I wish you success elsewhere," I told them. Back within the family structure, my calm refusal to back down clearly bothered Maya. She called me, demanding I not venture into areas beyond my capabilities. I was reviewing company financial reports at the time, making notes. I laughed softly into the phone. "What about Daniel? How come he's considered fit for the business battlefield, He's different. He's naturally suited for that kind of environment, she blurted out defensively. I slowly reminded her. Maya, Daniel, and I were college classmates. Academically, I consistently outperformed him. In fact, I was the one who recommended him for his first major job after graduation. Maya probably didn't know that, or had conveniently forgotten. Her perception of me was based on the passive role I had chosen to play for her sake, not on my actual capabilities. I possess an inner resilience, a certain courage. Last time it was used to face death. This time, it would be used for living. That night, Maya came home around 1 in the morning. She smelled faintly of Daniel's cologne and alcohol. I was sitting under a lamp in the living room, studying reports. I looked up and said casually, "You should probably take a shower before coming to bed." Maya furrowed her brows, a chill in her voice. "Why aren't you making a scene today?" I stretched languidly. "I don't have the time or energy. Besides," I added with a shrug, "isn't entertaining clients a normal part of doing business?" Maya stared at me, as if she couldn't quite reconcile this calm version of me with the emotional husband she was used to. She seemed to be waiting for me to demand an explanation, to start an argument. Instead, I simply got up and headed towards the bathroom to shower myself. She followed me to the bathroom door, watching my reflection in the mirror. "I had dinner with a client," she offered, her voice slightly defensive. "Daniel got drunk afterwards and I just took him home." I gave her a thumbs up in the mirror's reflection. "Awesome. My wife is a stellar boss. Here's to harmonious teamwork." My words were laced with irony she didn't seem to catch. Harmonious teamwork indeed. Hopefully it would speed up the inevitable progression of her relationship with Daniel. By the time things fully developed between them, I planned to have the company stabilized with new hires in place. Then, I could present her with full management control and the divorce papers simultaneously, perhaps as a parting gift. "That's not how you use the phrase harmonious teamwork," Maya scolded, clearly missing the sarcasm. She reached out towards me. "Leo, stop being so passive-aggressive, okay?" I burst out laughing then. Maya really didn't understand the situation at all. I sidestepped her touch, grabbed my spare blanket from the linen closet. "You go ahead and sleep first. I'm still recovering from that cold, remember? I'll sleep in the guest room again tonight." Maya's face darkened. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong, and forced the words through gritted teeth. "You think I'll never change, is that it? So you're acting this way deliberately?" I raised an eyebrow at her. "Yes." I gently loosened her grip on my arm and walked towards the guest room. I felt no fear, no apprehension. My lack of fear stemmed from a heart that no longer loved her. Once love dies, there's truly nothing left to fear losing. I heard Maya's footsteps, heavy and determined, going down the stairs. A moment later, the front door slammed shut, followed by the sound of her car engine starting and driving away quickly. Later that night, I saw Daniel posted on his social media. No picture, just 2 words. Heartache. I smiled faintly and commented below his post, "Have you tried looking into quick heart relief pills?" He replied awkwardly with a generic emoji. I turned off my phone, lit a cigarette, a habit I hadn't indulged in years, and watched the glowing tip in the darkness. Inside, I felt something begin to crack, old wounds slowly starting to ache again. It seemed I had inadvertently accelerated Maya's affair this time around. Although I hoped this life would be different, fundamentally, nothing had changed. She still rushed to Daniel's side at the first sign of trouble, right under my nose. The next morning, I arrived at the office building at the same time as Sophie. The entire building belonged to my family trust. 2 floors had been vacant for some time, so renting them to her made practical sense. Maya hadn't come home at all last night. Around noon, she called me. her voice filled with poorly concealed anger. "What's going on between you and Sophie? Are you ignoring me because of her now?" "Leaving prime office space empty is just losing money," I replied calmly. "If Sophie is willing to pay the market rate, I'll rent it to her. What's the big deal? Why do you care so much? Isn't she technically your sister?" "I told you, she has her own agenda. Stay away from her," Maya said coldly, "suddenly moving her company right underneath yours. She's definitely up to something. Don't come crying to me when it all blows up in your face." I managed a polite smile into the phone. "Got it. Thanks for the heads up. Was there anything else?" "Leo, why don't you ever listen to me?" Maya's anger finally broke through her control. "My patience is running thin." I glanced across the hallway where Sophie was waiting for the elevator, seemingly eavesdropping. I gave her a subtle gesture to relax. I smiled back into the phone. "Honey, real unreasonable behavior would sound like this. Where were you last night, Maya? Show me the dashcam footage from your car. Print out your call logs for me. Give me your Instagram password." Maya went completely silent on the other end. After a long moment, she sighed heavily and hung up without another word. I let out a slow breath myself. Last time, her small evasions and suspicious actions had pushed me to the brink of madness. I had, in fact, pressured her exactly like that, demanding proof, checking up on her constantly. I could still vividly remember the utter disgust in her eyes as she looked at me then. She had told me Daniel would never treat her like that, never invade her privacy. She claimed that even if something did happen between her and Daniel, it would be entirely my fault for being so controlling and suspicious. Now I wasn't checking up on her at all, wasn't demanding anything. Yet she still didn't seem happy. Sophie, who had walked over while I was on the phone, took a delicate sip of her tea. "You seem unhappy," she observed quietly. I tried to smile, shrugging. "Fighting with her. You know, it's not really enjoyable." Sophie lowered her gaze, hiding her expression again. She murmured, "I told you I have my own agenda with you." I waved dismissively and asked with a deliberately light-hearted smile, "Oh? And what might that be? Tell me. Whatever you're after, I'll gladly hand it over." I hold grudges, it's true, but I value kindness even more. Last time, her simple act of kindness at my deathbed felt like a debt that needed repaying. Sophie just sipped her tea again, not answering directly. But the corners of her mouth quirked up in a faint, gentle curve. The next few days were incredibly busy. I felt like I was running around like a headless chicken, dealing with the fallout from the staff departures and restructuring the company. I rarely got home before 10 or 11 at night. Maya was consistently coming home even later than me. I couldn't be bothered to ask where she was or what she was doing. I would just tidy up briefly, lock myself in the guest room, and fall into an exhausted sleep. Sometimes I wondered if last time I hadn't just handed over control of the company to Maya, if I had stayed involved, maybe things wouldn't have ended so badly for me. When you're working this insanely hard, there's simply no time or energy left for relationship drama. Sophie wasted no time moving her company into the 2 floors downstairs. Occasionally, we'd arrive at or leave the building around the same time. Having been out of the active business world for several years, I was still slowly readjusting. Sometimes Sophie would invite me to have lunch with her, subtly offering guidance or insights on business matters. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was young. I assumed she couldn't have much more practical experience than me. But eventually, I found myself consistently impressed, sometimes even speechless, at her sharp analysis and strategic thinking. In many ways, she became like an informal mentor to me. She helped me navigate several tricky situations and solve complex problems. She was certainly no less competent than Maya, perhaps even more astute in some areas. Puzzled, I asked her one day, "How do you know so much about all this?" Sophie smiled enigmatically over her teacup. After a moment, looking out the window, she replied softly, "I used to eavesdrop when Dad was teaching Maya about the business." She then asked me lightly, "Do you think Maya was right? That I'm calculating?" I focused on eating my lunch. "It doesn't bother me," I said honestly. "I don't believe you would ever hurt me." Sophie hesitated. "You're so sure?" I nodded. The one who had pushed me to the edge, who had ultimately caused my demise, was my own wife. Sophie was the one who vowed revenge for me. I trusted my instincts about her. Sophie seemed pleased by my response. She smiled, a genuine bright smile that lit up her face and momentarily dazzled me. I realized I had never truly seen her smile like that before, never knew how radiant it could be. After that, she started dropping by my office upstairs more often, sometimes offering to help review documents or discuss strategy. She seemed to become more open around me, no longer hiding her own business dealings. She'd take important calls or deal with work matters right in front of me. That's when I learned that the supposedly struggling little company the family had given her was, in fact, thriving under her leadership. It had quietly grown into a significant player in its niche market. The modest office space she initially maintained was just a facade. I began to understand what Maya meant when she called Sophie calculating. But honestly, I didn't care. My gut feeling remained unchanged. Sophie's intense, curious looks in my direction felt strange sometimes, but I didn't believe she would ever intentionally harm me. Maya and I continued to sleep in separate rooms. She still came home late, often carrying the faint scent of another man's cologne. Sometimes she'd step out onto the balcony to take hushed phone calls. But when she realized I genuinely didn't care, wasn't monitoring her, she started taking Daniel's calls openly in front of me. Some calls were clearly work-related, discussing business matters. Others were more personal, inquiries about her well-being. He even occasionally asked about me, likely fishing for information. I heard it all, yet felt nothing. It was just background noise. Later, whenever Maya answered a call from Daniel, I would simply pick up my laptop, offer her a warm, polite grin, and say, "Go ahead, talk, I won't interrupt." Then I'd retreat to the guest room. Sometimes I'd hear a loud crash from the master bedroom afterwards, not knowing what object she had knocked over or thrown in frustration. I ignored it, and usually fell into a deep sleep quickly. One night, I found Maya sitting alone in the dark dining room, drinking heavily. She drank a lot, bottle after bottle. Eventually, she stumbled upstairs and started knocking on the guest room door. I didn't open it. She kept knocking, persistent and stubborn. "I'm sleeping," I called out, exasperated. "I have an early start tomorrow." In a raspy, tear-choked voice, she slurred, "Nothing happened with Daniel. I was just trying to make you jealous, I swear." Frustrated, she pounded on the door again. "It's because you don't care. You're not even bothered enough to fight or argue with me anymore. Why?" I chuckled humorlessly from my side of the door. "Because I trust you, Maya. Can I please go back to sleep now?" Maya sounded genuinely pained. "I'm your wife. I should be sleeping beside you. I told you I have a cold." "You've had this cold for 2 months," Maya suddenly burst out in anger. "Fine. I'll show you my call logs, my Instagram password, my car's dashcam footage. I can even get surveillance footage from Daniel's apartment building." She sounded utterly exhausted. "Can I please just come in?" I didn't open the door. When I had demanded proof, she was irritated and refused. Now she offered it willingly, but I no longer wanted it. Maya apparently slept slumped against my doorstep all night. The next morning, her eyes were bloodshot and puffy. She watched me closely as I got ready for work, scrutinizing my every expression. "Do you not love me anymore?" she asked quietly, her voice raw. I smiled faintly, reaching out to gently touch her cheek. Don't overthink things. I just have a cold. In my past life, this display of vulnerability might have moved me. I might have held her, cried with her, believed her promises. But in this life, I just watched her quietly as she eventually gave up, slammed the front door, and left. Dying once really does make a person colder, more detached. Maya didn't come home for several days after that. Daniel called me, lecturing me in a concerned tone. "What's going on with you and Maya? She's been really down lately, calling me to go drinking with her late at night." "Call her boss if you're concerned about her work performance," I replied dryly, glancing at some files on my computer. Then, seeing an opportunity, I asked him a few pointed questions about a business deal his company was involved in. Daniel is undeniably good at what he does. Why not make use of his expertise? He seemed confused by my abrupt shift in topic, but once he understood the questions, answered them, though his tone was tinged with disbelief. "You'd rather worry about your company's deals than care if your wife isn't coming home?" he asked pointedly. He then hinted, "She's always coming to me, you know, complaining about you, saying you're clueless about her needs. Aren't you afraid you'll get replaced?" "Like, by you mean?" I asked, still focused on my screen. Daniel paused. "I just don't want to see Maya suffer," he said, trying to sound noble. "I want to be there to comfort her." I laughed softly then, throwing his own words from my past life back at him. "Please don't bother my wife. You should keep your distance from married folks." Daniel was stunned into silence for a moment, then hung up abruptly without another word. I stared blankly at my computer screen for a while after the call ended. Even in this new life, Daniel's meddling, his possessiveness towards Maya, still managed to get under my skin. The cracks in my carefully constructed emotional wall started to ache again. It turns out, even with a second chance, you can still remember the pain from the last time. Just as I was grappling with that residual pain, Maya called. "Did Daniel tell you that you misunderstood him? Did you yell at him?" she asked, her voice surprisingly calm. I nodded silently into the phone, waiting for her expected explosion. In the last life, she had gone ballistic after I confronted Daniel, calling me ignorant, crude, and possessive. But now, Maya was actually smiling. I could hear it in her voice. "Leo," she said, sounding pleased, "you still care about me, don't you?" She laughed softly. "Your silence means you agree." I sighed inwardly. "Yeah, sure," I conceded wearily. The company restructuring was pretty much complete by now. I had brought in some reliable executives through my parents' connections, and Sophie had lent me a few highly competent managers from her own thriving company. With the business stabilized, it felt like time to address some unresolved personal matters. As I was packing up my briefcase for the day, ready to head to a restaurant Maya had booked for dinner, Sophie came upstairs to my office. "Maya's waiting downstairs," she informed me neutrally. "She has a ridiculous amount of roses, and she swapped her usual sedan for a flashy sports car." "I know," I replied. "We're having dinner tonight." Sophie looked down, hiding her expression as she often did. "Made up?" she asked quietly. "No, just something we need to talk about." Sophie shook her head slightly, her hands shoved deep in her pockets, her eyes dark. "Do you still have feelings for Maya?" she asked directly. "What, do you need relationship advice?" I joked, trying to deflect. Wendy smiled, that mysterious smile again. If one day I were to go up against Maya in business, would you hold it against me?" I had some inkling of what she might be implying. Sophie's strategic moves in the capital market recently seemed to subtly circle back towards Maya's family interests. When she spoke about Maya, her tone was always colder, devoid of any familial affection. and she made no effort to hide her disdain. Predators sense weakness and opportunity. I put a finger to my lips. Don't tell anyone else. I'll pretend I didn't hear anything. As I turned to leave, Sophie's quiet voice stopped me. You'll never guess the real reason I'm against her. I have good hearing. I heard her clearly. I turned back, puzzled. Why? Sophie smiled at me then, a strange mix of sadness and determination in her eyes. What if I told you it's because of a nightmare? Would you believe me? It sounded like an absurd excuse, yet looking at her, I found myself nodding. Sure, I'd believe you. Because in her eyes, beneath the surface, I saw a reflection of my own fear and anxiety. It must have been one hell of a nightmare. When I got downstairs, Maya was indeed standing by a low-slung sports car, holding an enormous bouquet of roses that almost hid her face. She was attracting stares from everyone passing by. People looked from the roses to me with envious glances. I just thought the display was excessive, almost desperate. When she first pursued me years ago, her gestures felt sincere, passionate. She put her whole heart into winning me over. Everyone told me how lucky I was, how happy I would be. I believed them. I thought I would be happy too. But then she cheated, and I died. All those past sentiments felt like smoke, drifting away, leaving nothing behind. I took the flowers from her without comment and tossed them onto the passenger seat. No need for all this, I said tiredly. We're just going to talk. She tried to link her arm through mine, but I subtly dodged her and got into the car. I saw the flash of disappointment on her face, but ignored it. In the restaurant, Maya had ordered a table full of all my favorite dishes. I remained silent, looking at the spread. In my past life, during one of my desperate attempts to win her back, I had brought her here, to this same restaurant. She had sat in this same spot and mindlessly ordered all of Daniel's favorite foods. I remember the crushing pain, the argument that followed. She denied it, of course, claiming she just liked those dishes. She forgot, or didn't care, that I knew Daniel from college, had known him for 4 years. I knew his preferences better than she did at that point. After we fought that night, Daniel conveniently got sick, and she rushed off to take care of him. Now, sitting in the same familiar spot, faced with food supposedly catered to my tastes, I found I couldn't eat. The pain lingered, a phantom ache, a reminder of the naive, heartbroken boy I used to be, still crying somewhere inside me. Maya sighed dramatically. It feels like it's been forever since we last did this, just the two of us. I nodded curtly. Since you met Daniel? A flicker of guilt crossed her face. There might have been some initial appreciation, she admitted carefully, but over time, I realized it was mostly about trying to get your attention, trying to make you react. Maya reached across the table for my hand. The warmth of her touch was familiar, yet I had changed. I pulled my hand away gently and sighed. I wish you had said that in my past life. What? Tina looked utterly confused. I sat up straighter, meeting her eyes. Never mind. I came here tonight to talk about something specific. She cut me off quickly. Leo, I want to win you back. I know I messed up, but... I interrupted her just as quickly. But I want a divorce. Tina stared at me, stunned, as if she hadn't heard me correctly. She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. What did you just say? I said, I repeated clearly, leaning forward slightly, I want a divorce. Tina leaned back in her chair, as if physically trying to escape the words. I leaned forward again. Tina, there's no point in continuing this. I've drafted the divorce agreement. If you have any objections or want to discuss the terms, we can, but... Tina frowned, taking a deep breath, her brow furrowing. Why? Is it because of Daniel? I hesitated for a moment. You could say that's not entirely wrong. After all, in my past life, Daniel's presence, her feelings for him, ultimately led to our divorce and my fatal accident. Seeing my hesitation, Tina slammed her hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. I swear I didn't touch him, she yelled, attracting attention from nearby tables. I was just trying to get a reaction out of you. She trailed off, looking genuinely confused. But don't you dislike it when I act out or make a scene? I asked quietly. In my past life, was she suffering from some kind of split personality? Or had she fundamentally changed in this life? I don't like it when you're hysterical, she clarified, looking hurt. But you can't be completely indifferent either. I was taken aback. I thought for a moment. Then something clicked. No, I said slowly. It's not really about Daniel. From the very beginning, it was always about you, Maya. Just you. I pulled out the folded divorce agreement from my jacket pocket, a document identical in its terms to the one she had given me in our previous life, and handed it to her. Take a look. I've tried to consider both of our interests fairly. We can discuss any objections you might have. Those were almost her exact words to me back then. Tina took the document, glanced at it briefly, then let out a cold sneer. Seems like you've been planning this for quite a while. Very thorough. I closed my eyes briefly. If this divorce agreement was the result of long-term scheming, then it was her scheme in the last life, not mine. She looked up at me, her smile mocking now. I don't understand why you suddenly want a divorce, Leo, but I can tell you right now, it's not possible. She slowly, deliberately tore the agreement into small pieces, letting them flutter onto the table like confetti. It is not possible, Leo, she repeated firmly. Before we got married, we promised each other we would never, ever mention the word divorce. Did you forget? You forgot first, I countered coldly, standing up from the table. Even if a contract gets torn up, it can still be rewritten. Tina, this is useless. Tina stood up too. Let's go. We're going home. She refused to mention the agreement again, acting as if the entire conversation hadn't happened. All the way back home, she kept up a stream of chatter about things she thought might interest me. Luxury goods, fashion trends, upcoming social events. But my interest now lay solely with my company. I knew little about the topics she brought up. We talked past each other the entire drive. When we got home, Tina watched silently as I went directly into the guest room. She didn't say anything, just let out an almost imperceptible sigh. Hope your cold gets better soon, she murmured before I closed the door. After that night, Tina seemed to change her tactics. She started coming home by 8 p.m. every evening, always bearing a gift. Sometimes I worked late at the office, and she would wait quietly at home for me. As soon as I walked in, she'd present me with the gift. If I didn't immediately take it, she'd insist, sometimes laughing bitterly. I never knew waiting for someone to come home could be so difficult, she admitted once. I'll cut down on unnecessary socializing from now on. I lowered my head, not responding. There was a time when sleepless nights waiting for her had utterly worn me out. When was that? Tina asked softly. I looked up at her and smiled faintly. In a past life. Tina clearly thought I was being sarcastic or metaphorical. She just handed me the gift, a humble plea visible in her eyes. Leo, when will your cold finally get better? I placed the gift unopened on the living room couch and looked at her sincerely. Never, Maya, not in this lifetime. Tina's eyes dimmed, yet she forced another smile. I don't believe it. I'll wait for you. I said nothing more and went into the guest room. A few days later, Tina informed me about an important industry party. She needed a +1 and asked me to accompany her. My first thought was that she should ask Daniel. But Tina argued it wouldn't look appropriate for her, a CEO, to bring her subordinate as her date when most other attendees would be with their spouses. I now ran my own company and understood the importance of networking. I saw the party as an opportunity to make valuable connections, so I agreed to go. At the party, when Tina saw me dressed formally, she seemed genuinely mesmerized. "You look really handsome tonight," she murmured. I smiled politely, but didn't comment. Once, I had spent a significant amount of time and effort on my appearance, trying to please her, but she rarely seemed to notice or care. Tonight, I was just wearing a standard business suit, nothing particularly special, certainly less polished than I used to be. Yet now, she was captivated. People truly are strange and confusing creatures. Sophie was also present at the party. She caught my eye across the room and raised her glass slightly in greeting. Her deep eyes revealed nothing. She had arrived alone, without a date. I suspected Tina might have deliberately downplayed the event's significance to me, perhaps implying I wasn't really needed because even Daniel had come alone. Seeing Tina enter on my arm, Daniel's gaze dimmed noticeably, but he quickly composed himself and came over with a forced smile. "Tina, Leo looks quite commanding tonight." He bit his lip slightly, trying to appear pitiful yet restrained. Tina gave him a brief, dismissive look before quickly turning her attention back to the room. "Yes, he does look quite commanding," she agreed coolly. Daniel forced another weak smile. "It's good to see you and Leo reconciled. Truly, congratulations." He then looked directly at me. "Whenever Tina got drunk recently, she'd come to my place and talk about you for hours, late into the night." "We're not reconciled," I cut him off flatly. Daniel blinked, a spark of something, hope, surprise, flashing in his eyes before vanishing. I smiled faintly and repeated, "We are not reconciled. I am here strictly for business purposes." I thought Daniel would be visibly pleased by this confirmation, but instead he looked almost regretful, then angry. "Leo, are you being too cruel to Tina?" he demanded, his voice rising slightly. "It's hard even for me to watch. Tina loves you so much, and yet you treat her love like trash. Have you spared any thought for her dignity?" His righteous indignation amused me. I shrugged. "Why don't you think about it for her then, so I don't have to?" "You're so unappreciative," Daniel snapped, getting genuinely angry now. "So many people would love to be in your position, loved by Tina, but you just take her for granted. You're ungrateful." I turned to Tina, who had been listening silently. "Does your subordinate have the right to speak to me like this?" I asked calmly. Daniel looked towards her, too, his eyes filled with pity and affection. I had to admit, if I were a woman susceptible to such displays, I might find it hard to resist. Daniel really should have been an actor. But Tina's face turned cold. She rounded on Daniel, scolding him sharply. "Why are you interfering in my personal affairs? Understand your place, Daniel, and stay out of things that do not concern you." Both Daniel and I were stunned by her harsh rebuke. Tina then looked back at me, her expression softening, almost pleading. "If you don't like him, Leo, I can make him leave the company. I can make him leave the city entirely. You'll never have to see him again." Her eyes, when focused on me, were filled with desperate affection. When looking at Daniel moments before, there was only impatience and dismissal. I should have felt happy, right? Vindicated? This seemed like a complete turning point. The ultimate victory for the reborn protagonist defeating the rival. But I didn't feel happy. I felt just as dull and empty as before. The roles had simply reversed. Me and Daniel. Whether Maya was fed up with me or fed up with Daniel, the underlying dynamic felt the same. I couldn't find any satisfaction in it. Instead, the scene only reminded me more vividly of the bitterness and humiliation of being rejected in my past life. Daniel, utterly crushed, turned and practically fled the ballroom. Tina immediately grabbed my arm tightly, her eyes searching mine. "Leo, will this finally make you get over your cold?" I lowered my gaze. How could it? It was never going to happen, not in this life. Some breaks are too profound, some wounds too deep to mend, like a life lost. I shook my head slowly. "No, Maya. It'll never get better. Stop hoping. Let's just get a divorce." Tina was taken aback, her face falling, turning darker by the second. She pulled me forcefully into a deserted corner of the ballroom. "Leo," she hissed, her voice trembling with emotion. "I even treated Daniel like that for you, and you still don't believe me? What exactly do you want from me?" I pushed her away gently but firmly. The accumulation of old wounds, the pain from 2 lifetimes, seemed to reach a critical point. The agony exploded within me, though my voice remained quiet. "I don't want anything from you, Maya. I just want a divorce. What you do with Daniel or anyone else is your business. I just want out. Get it?" Tina yanked me back towards her, her fingers digging into my arm. She ground her teeth. "Dream on!" Suddenly, she leaned in, kissing me hard, almost violently. "Leo," she mumbled against my lips, "you will never get a divorce from me in this life." A wave of nausea washed over me. Those lips, they had once kissed Daniel too. Even in my past life, that was a betrayal I couldn't forgive. I guess I'm petty like that. Without a second thought, reacting purely on instinct and revulsion, I raised my hand and slapped Tina hard across the face. The sound echoed sharply in the quiet corner. Her face instantly started to swell. I rubbed my own lips vigorously with the back of my hand, wishing I could scrub off the contact, scrub off the memory. "Stay away from me," I choked out. Tina's face went from shocked pale to bruised blue, then settled into an expression of icy indifference I had never seen before. "Good job, Leo," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "No one has ever hit me before." She backed away slowly, step by step, her eyes locked onto mine, filled with a chilling coldness. "You don't want me? Fine, I'll show you. I can have anyone I want in my bed if I choose." With that, she spun around abruptly, walked briskly back towards the main ballroom, found Daniel near the entrance, hugged him tightly, and walked out with him, leaving me standing alone in the corner. I stood there stunned for a long moment. People nearby had noticed the commotion, the slap. Whispers started, gossip spreading through the crowd. Some acquaintances approached cautiously, asking if I was okay. I ignored them all, feeling numb. Sophie pushed through the onlookers, reaching out her hand to me. "Leo," she said softly, her voice steady. "Let me take you home." I looked up at her through blurred, tear-filled eyes. Seeing that familiar, determined face, so similar to the face I saw in my final moments in the past life. Memories from both lifetimes intertwined, overwhelming me. I took her offered hand and let her pull me to my feet, stumbling slightly as she drew me into a comforting embrace. Her voice was cold, tight with barely contained anger. "Don't worry. Even if I have to tear Maya's entire family apart, piece by piece, I will avenge you." My body trembled. Was it just a coincidence? Why were her words exactly the same as the ones whispered in the hospital room before? I wanted to ask her, but my voice wouldn't work. So I just let her lead me out of the party, held tightly in her arms, letting her soothe me like a child. "I'll make them pay," she murmured, stroking my back. "I'll get revenge for you." It's okay. I felt utterly exhausted. The weight of 2 lifetimes felt too heavy to bear. I curled into her embrace in the car and fell into a hazy sleep. She helped me back to the guest room in my apartment, tucked me into bed, and locked the door from the outside. My sleep was restless, filled with fragmented nightmares. Sometime in the middle of the night, loud knocking woke me. It was Maya, back at my door, clearly drunk and hysterical. "Open up, Leo! Open the door!" she yelled, pounding on the wood. "I'm your wife! I want to come in!" She screamed incoherently. I tried to go through with things with Daniel, but I couldn't. My head is full of you. You abandoned me. Just open the door, Leo. I can't lose you." Hearing her desperate cries, tears streamed down my face again uncontrollably. Memories of lying alone in that cold hospital bed, waiting to die, flooded back, crushing me with their intensity. I yanked the door open and slapped Maya hard across the face again. She stumbled back, stunned. Before she could react, another slap followed. Tears streamed down my face as I choked out the words, "Maya, I lost a life for you, 1 entire life. Do you think that can ever be undone?" Sobbing, I continued, "While I was lying cold and alone, waiting to die in a hospital bed, you were marrying Daniel. I called you. I begged you to change your mind. You didn't even pick up the phone. You cut off my last hope, my last chance at life. I didn't die in that car crash, Maya. I died because of you. By your hands." Maya stood there, utterly speechless, her mouth opening and closing but no words coming out. I crouched down on the floor, burying my face in my hands, overwhelmed by grief. Once you cross certain lines, the outcome is set. No one can change it. Maya tentatively reached a hand towards me. "Leo, I understand. You're having some kind of breakdown, right? Are you imagining things about me and Daniel?" "It's okay, Leo. I'll take you to see a doctor tomorrow. We'll see the doctor, get you some help, and everything will be fine." Before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly collapsed onto the floor right in front of me. Sophie stood behind her, calmly clapping the dust off her hands, her face blank. "Too much talking," Sophie stated flatly. "Let her sleep it off." Terrified, I reached out a shaking hand to check Maya's pulse, relieved to find she was just unconscious, breathing steadily. Sophie nudged Maya's inert body aside with her foot and squatted down beside me. I noticed she was trembling, shaking hard, holding on to me tightly as if she'd never let go. She refused to let me go back to the bed, insisting we just sit there on the floor. She pressed me into her embrace, silent, like someone who had just survived a terrifying ordeal, filled with residual fear. I asked her several times to let me go, but she seemed not to hear me, just held on tighter. Eventually, as dawn began to break, I couldn't stay awake any longer. Just as I was drifting off, I heard her hoarse whisper close to my ear, "That dream, it's real." In Sophie's arms, I managed only about 2 hours of fragmented sleep. When I woke up, the crushing weight on my chest felt slightly lighter, as if the foolish, heartbroken boy from my past life had finally cried all his tears and vanished from the world. With his departure, it felt like time for me to truly leave that past behind as well. I glanced at Sophie beside me. She clearly hadn't slept either. Her usually clear eyes were streaked with red veins. Seeing me open my eyes, she held me tighter for a moment, as if afraid I might disappear too. I gave her a weak smile and asked softly, "Can you help me move?" Sophie nodded without hesitation, stood up, and together we carefully stepped over Maya's still unconscious form in the hallway and began packing my remaining belongings. Within half an hour, I had moved back into my parents' empty house across town. Before leaving Maya's apartment for the last time, I took one final look around the place that held so many memories, both painful and, long ago, happy. Now cleared of any trace of me, it felt foreign. Letting out a quiet, bitter laugh, I turned and walked out into the sunrise. Every day from here on felt like a clean slate, a new beginning. After I moved out, Maya immediately fired Daniel. Then, she tried everything she could think of to get back with me, even resorting to begging and pleading on several occasions. However, she never pushed too hard, never became overly aggressive. She seemed convinced I was suffering from some kind of mental illness triggered by trauma, and she was afraid that provoking me too much would cause a relapse. Apart from refusing to discuss the divorce, she complied with almost everything else I asked. If I got upset or seemed distressed during our brief interactions, she would leave immediately. Eventually, she seemed to have less time and energy for romantic pursuits anyway. Sophie launched her campaign against Maya's family interests in earnest. It was clearly a plan long in the making, executed with ruthless efficiency. With Sophie driven and relentless, and Maya overwhelmed and distracted, Maya's family business began to crumble. No one in their social or business circles ever suspected that Sophie, the girl who once seemed so insignificant, so overlooked, would one day grow into such a formidable force, turning back to systematically dismantle the family empire, seemingly for no apparent reason. The corporate battle lasted for about a year. Sophie emerged as a brilliant rising star in the business world. Maya's family company was gutted, unable to recover from the strategic blows. I was the one who finally convinced Sophie to stop. Not for Maya's sake, but because Sophie herself started to worry me. Ever since that night she held me after the confrontation with Maya, the intense anger I saw in her eyes never truly faded. It only seemed to grow, simmering beneath the surface. Sometimes she would suddenly fall silent, then cling to me desperately, forcing me to promise her again and again that I would live well, stay safe. I started to wonder if perhaps she was the one with lingering mental health issues, not me. I urged her to stop, to take a break, telling her she was exhausting herself. Sophie initially refused. Only when I pretended to get angry did she finally relent. Terrified, she said, that my anger might lead me to make irreparable mistakes. I found her reasoning strange, couldn't figure out where she got that idea, but I didn't push it. In the end, Sophie agreed to halt her campaign and take a much-needed rest. This gave Maya a small breather, and she came looking for me again. She no longer possessed her former radiance. She looked tired, worn down. Even though she never used to drink during the day, I could smell the faint scent of alcohol on her breath when she arrived in the late afternoon. She chuckled sadly. "Since you left, Leo, I've been in pain every single day. I haven't had a good night's sleep in a long, long time." She sank into a chair, her eyes dark-rimmed, looking like she hadn't slept properly in ages. She pleaded softly. "Leo, can I just sleep here for a little while? I only seem to sleep well when I'm near you." I sighed, but remained silent, not objecting. Tina quickly fell asleep in the chair, but it wasn't a peaceful rest. She seemed agitated, her eyes moving rapidly beneath her closed eyelids, her brow deeply furrowed. After a while, she started talking in her sleep. "No! Stop! Leo, stop!" Then she screamed, "Leo, hold on! Cooperate with the doctors! I'll come save you!" Her cries turned into heart-wrenching sobs, the kind of raw grief I had never witnessed from her before. Her palpable emotions infected me, and scenes from our past life flashed uncontrollably through my mind, from our first meeting, to falling in love, the betrayal, the accident, the death. That foolish kid I used to be. Is he doing okay now? Has he finally found peace in eternal rest? It felt like ages passed before Tina woke up from the nightmare, her eyes red, tear tracks staining her face. She jumped up from the chair, threw herself towards me, examining me closely, frantically, before stretching out a trembling hand to gently caress my face. "Leo, you're alive." "Thank goodness," she whispered, her eyes still red. I dreamed I did something incredibly stupid, something that caused you to leave me." Her voice was hoarse, tears rolling down her cheeks again. "The dream, it was terrifying." Then Tina paused, looking at me with dawning disbelief. She asked hesitantly, "I remember, before you moved out, you said you lost your life for me, right, Leo?" Gripping my hand tightly, she pressed, "Did you really say that? Or was I just drunk and misremembering? You said you were reborn once, right?" In our 2 lifetimes together, I had never seen Maya so cautious, so uncertain, choosing each word with such care. I even found myself thinking, if that foolish, heartbroken kid from the past life were here now, would he find it in himself to forgive this worn-out, broken woman? Unfortunately, I am not him. I smiled at her, my own eyes misty. "What do you think?" Tina shook her head slowly, wanting to laugh, but unable to. I think it doesn't make any scientific sense." I wiped away my own tears, neither nodding nor shaking my head in confirmation. I couldn't deny what felt like my reality. The pain was real. The life lost felt real. I can't deny it, and I won't. Tina stood up abruptly, stumbling back a step, shaking her head constantly. "This isn't real. It's not possible. It's not scientific. It must have just been a dream." She forced a weak smile. "Leo, is your mental illness contagious?" I calmly told her, "Mental illness isn't contagious, Maya." I took out the divorce papers again. "I died for you once. Isn't one life enough sacrifice for you to finally let me go? Divorce is the only way forward for us." Tina desperately denied it, shaking her head vehemently. "No, this isn't possible. Your illness. It must have infected me. I can't believe it." Staggering, she turned and fled from my house as if ghosts were chasing her. For 3 days, Tina disappeared completely. Her entire family searched for her but couldn't find any trace. After 3 whole days, she showed up unexpectedly at my office building. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair unkempt. She looked almost unrecognizable. Her voice was hoarse, cracked. "I've been dreaming for 3 days straight, Leo," she whispered, tears filling her eyes, both past and present. I saw it all. She reached out a trembling hand. "I believe you, Leo. I believe you." She took a deep breath. "Give me the divorce papers. I'll sign them. I have no face left to try and keep you." I handed her the papers, and without even looking at them this time, she signed her name quickly. As she turned to leave, tears rolled down her cheeks again. "From now on," she murmured, more to herself than to me, "I will never marry again. I won't touch another man. Consider it my way of atoning." Watching her weary, defeated silhouette walk away, I felt a strange pang of something, pity, sadness, yet also an overwhelming sense of relief. 2 lifetimes of entanglement, of marriage and betrayal, were finally truly over. I closed my eyes, feeling utterly exhausted, but somehow drifted into a peaceful sleep right there at my desk, not quite understanding why. Maybe I was just profoundly tired. I found myself in the same dreamscape Tina had described, witnessing scenes from our past life playing out again. It kept unfolding, moment by painful moment, until I was back in that cold hospital room, waiting to die, with Sophie keeping vigil by my side. I thought my dream would end there, just as my life had. But no, the dream continued. I saw Sophie holding my cold, lifeless body, tears streaming down her face as the rage in her eyes intensified. Her chilly fingertips gently wiped the dried blood from my face, and she whispered softly in my ear, "Leo, wait for me. After I get revenge for you, I'll tell you a secret." The tears fell onto my spectral face, cold to the touch. Later, I watched as Sophie systematically took revenge on Maya's family, bringing down their massive corporate dynasty until it was worthless. Many family members ended up in jail. Some, facing ruin, even took their own lives. Yet Maya, the former head of the family, seemed completely indifferent to the destruction. Everyone called her crazy. She spent years seeking out mediums and mystics all over the world, desperately trying to bring back my spirit. She traveled everywhere: Nepal, India, Thailand, Mexico, chasing any rumor, any possibility. After her family fortune was gone, she lost her wealth and status, eventually working odd jobs just to fund her obsessive search for me. She searched for 5 long years. In the 5th year, someone convinced her I had somehow returned to the past, been reborn. So she began a new quest, searching for a way to travel back in time herself. Another 5 years passed. The relentless search aged her prematurely. Her once vibrant hair turned white as snow. One day, Sophie appeared before her again, her voice cold. "Even if you find him, Maya, would he still want to see you? You are the reason he died? Would you forgive your own killer?" Tina was stunned into silence. She sat frozen all night and finally gave up her search for me. The next day she became a recluse, drinking heavily to drown her sorrows. Eventually she fell ill and refused all treatment, simply letting go of life. As for Sophie, she buried my body in a vast, beautiful field of flowers. She visited my grave every single day, despite her incredibly busy life managing her now successful company. Occasionally, she would bring a bottle of wine and drink alone by my headstone, shedding quiet tears. "Leo," she would whisper, "do you know why I didn't kill Maya directly? Because I wanted to find you, too. Although I tried every method imaginable, I had no luck. I hoped maybe Maya, with her obsession, might actually succeed. At least Maya hadn't forgotten you. Just like I hadn't. Maybe if more people were thinking of you, remembering you, you might somehow return." She would talk to my tombstone for hours. "Leo, when everyone else looked down on me, ignored me, only you smiled at me. Only you cared if I had a fever, if I was hungry. You snuck gifts to me, made sure I took my medicine." Her voice would break. "I said I'd tell you a secret, Leo. The secret is, the very first time you smiled at me, truly smiled, I fell in love with you. No one's smile is as beautiful as yours." She remained by my grave, figuratively and literally, for her entire life, never marrying, never loving anyone else. I woke up from the dream utterly exhausted, tears streaming down my face. I immediately rushed downstairs, looking for Sophie, but she wasn't in her office or apartment. I called her cell phone frantically. "Where are you?" Sophie hesitated on the other end. "I'm in a garden." I had never heard of Sophie visiting any garden before, but suddenly it hit me. The flower field from my dream. It had to be real. I drove straight there, following a hunch, a desperate hope. And sure enough, amidst acres of vibrant peach pink and buttery yellow blossoms, I saw her tall, slender figure standing alone. Her eyes looked dazed, distant, like someone who had just awakened from a profound dream. When she saw me approaching, she reached out her hand towards me, showing no surprise at my sudden appearance. "Leo," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "I just dreamed of you again." There was still fear lingering in her eyes, as if she hadn't fully woken up yet. In the dream, I stayed there with you, by your side, all my life. I don't ever want to dream that again. I put my hand in hers, letting her fingers intertwine with mine. Tears fell freely from my eyes again. Did you plant this flower field? I asked, my voice choked. She blushed slightly and nodded. For what? I pressed gently. For someone I like to see? She replied softly. Did the person you like see it? Sophie looked at me deeply then, took a step forward, and leaned into my arms, resting her head against my chest. He saw, she murmured. He's right here, by my side. Her eyes held a determined look, yet laced with a trace of familiar unease. But I don't know if he likes me. I do, I nodded fiercely, holding her tighter. I do. Looking at her beautiful face, her eyes filled with disbelief, gradually turning into radiant joy, she hugged me back cautiously, almost afraid to hurt me. This careful, complex woman. She had carried so much vengeful anger for my sake, toppled an empire out of loyalty and perhaps love. In 2 lifetimes. How could I not love her? Sophie, I leaned into her, my voice quiet but firm. I'm divorced from Maya now. I felt her heart beat quicken against my chest, and she tightened her arms around me, pulling me even closer. Leo, can I? She started hesitantly. You can. I nodded firmly, meeting her gaze. In the next second, she tilted her head and kissed my lips. Surrounded by the intoxicating fragrance of 1,000,000 flowers, under the vast open sky, amidst a dazzling array of colors, we kissed with abandon. The previous life, with all its pain and regret, finally seemed completely, irrevocably over.